All right, good afternoon and good evening to my YouTuber viewers. Today I have a very special guest with me in my channel, and I would like to welcome him in my YouTube channel, TT Booktuber, and will introduce him to you all viewers. So today's session is going to be really special as I am interacting with Mr. Steve Correa. He's an executive coach and HR consultant and founder of Steve Correa and Associates, and also an author of very famous book, which is in my hand. You can see, guys, The Indian Boss at Work, which I have read and reviewed, and you can find that video as well in both the languages, Hindi and English, in my channel. And I found this kind of very rarely book in market actually earlier as well, which I when I reviewed that time also I given this statement. Again I am saying the kind of content I found in this book lead me to interact with Steve and call him in my channel actually. And he has total almost 3 decade corporate experience and almost 2 decade work as a chief human resource officer CHRO in big corporate like Patni, Vodafone, Jio, and many more. I think engaged human resource management and industrial relations policies and operations. So Steve, first of all, I would like to welcome you in my channel talk show, and it's my pleasure and honor to have you in my show. And thank you so much. You spare your valuable time. I know that you have a tied up schedule all the day, and it was very difficult time to get your some slot, but still I able to manage it, and you had given me that time. So for that, really, thank you so much. And once again, I would like to welcome to you, Steve, in my
Thank
channel.
you, Tribhuvan. It's a pleasure to be on your show. And you've done such great work earlier in terms of both the Hindi and the English version on YouTube. So thank you very much for the kind patronage and the kind words you've shared today.
Thank you so much. So straight away, I will get into the your book uh, questionnaire, Steve. Um, when I first, my first impression about this book when I took it, it catch me without reading and knowing about the title of this book, which is The Indian Boss at Work. You have done a lot of research and Indian on the Indian leaders. You are in the corporate world. You speak a lot of people, and you have a rich 3 decade almost corporate experience, which reflect in this book as well. And I have two motive today talk, Steve, with you. First is to know more about this book, which can be very helpful to the leaders, today's leaders, young leaders specifically. And since you have a huge corporate experience that to work as a CHRO role, to get some valuable tips to my viewers, that also I will seek from you. And typically the HR tip specifically. So coming to my first question on the same context, Steve, please give some insight about the book title, The Indian Boss at Work. Is very catchy title. How it arrived? And before I am over to you, giving to you, I just make a suggestions. So not a suggestion, submissions. Whenever because I'm reading a lot of books and title catch me actually. I will give you an example. Another book which is related to Gita. I read many books, but when I saw that title of E.D. Biswanathan book, The Secret of Bhagavad Gita, and without looking at the content, I buy that book actually. And that is a different story. That book also gives me the way the title it was really gives you a good insight. So the important things was the title. So can you just little bit elaborate how you arrive with this title?
Okay, so thank you for that. Let me begin by first quickly telling you about the origin of the book. Back in November 2011, at an NHRD conference in Bangalore,
Okay.
A global HR speaker was talking about a leadership practice.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody in the audience raised his hand and said, we must have our own Indian way of management. We should develop that and run organizations through that process.
Okay.
So he very kindly turned around to the audience and said, would anyone like to come on stage and share an Indian way of management?
Okay.
And to my horror, there was
Uh-huh.
pin drop silence,
Uh-huh.
and nobody actually came up immediately. A few seconds passed to everyone's embarrassment. Finally, somebody went and said a few points. And Tribhuvan, at that moment, I experienced epiphany. I
Mm,
realized that my own knowledge of Indianness, Indian way of management was weak. As you know, I know.
mm,
Whatever Indianness we know is on Amar Chitra Khatha or some
mm,
episode or
mm,
some Dadima has been telling us some stories.
mm,
But our understanding of Indianness and Indian leadership practice
mm,
is not available to us.
mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I decided that I'm going to put on, um, um, uh, snorkel glasses and
Mm,
jump into the ocean of Indianness.
mm,
And when I did, only for 20 feet, I
mm,
found there was a vast treasures
mm,
available around Indic wisdom, which
mm,
is 7,000 years old.
mm,
And and this contrasted with popular notions of universal leadership.
mm,
So I wanted to talk about the Indian, not leader, but
mm.
the Indian boss.
Indian bosses.
And because I neither wish to condemn
Mm.
nor I wish to glorify.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you look at, broadly speaking, Tribhuvan,
Mm.
you've got one school of philosophy which talks about Freud and the inner person.
Yeah,
You've got Carl Jung talking about universal archetypes.
yeah.
But what nobody talks about in the context of leadership and psychology
Mm,
is the role of Kal, Desh, and Patra, which
mm,
is time, geography, and the nature, the ethnic nature of the region.
mm,
And my book was trying to contextualize leadership
mm.
in the context of the Indian environment,
Oh.
and to be able to bring the context.
Mm,
What is this Indian way of management?
mm,
And what lessons can others who interact with Indians or
mm,
others
mm,
who wish to learn from this Indian way in
mm,
terms of global practice? And
mm.
hence my book, The Indian Boss at Work.
Yeah,
And then it has an interesting subtitle,
yeah.
uh,
Yes,
Global Acting Indian.
yes, yes. Yeah, great, great, great. And even I see that thoroughly on the book as well, because I am not a kind of book reader who will just read some important pages. I read each and every line. So that is how I read the book. And even sometime if I like some chapter, I read twice or thrice that. So I found really a few chapter in it which gives that impression to me that really you have done a lot of research around it, and it's a different topic altogether. I find a lot of books, but I not found any such kind of book which gives this kind of insight. Basically, what we you just talk about.
And
So
I'm glad that you enjoyed it because you reread twice,
yes,
thrice, because the way to read this book is really the Indian way of understanding, which is through Shravana, Manana,
yes,
and Nidhi Dhyasana.
yes,
And it is a synoptical reading
absolutely.
and the more you penetrate into the reading,
Yes.
the more is the depth. And I'm saying this because, Tribhuvan, this book has been written standing on the shoulders of giants. And
Yeah.
so many giants were there, about
Yeah.
400 citations plus.
Yes.
And it is through their eyes
Yes. Yes. Yes.
that one
Absolutely.
could see and one could write.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Correct, correct, correct. So, a continuation of that, the next question is related to the same, another catchy title in it, Thinking Global, Acting India. Can you just give some insight on this tagline?
Okay, most people jump to the conclusion that this book is about trying to be like the West, global,
Yeah,
and we are Indians.
Yes.
and therefore that is the reason. Not at all.
Yeah.
There is, in the 7,000 years of history, there is some eternal principles of
Mhm.
Indian, which is global. The world
Mm.
is one family. Let everyone be happy. Shubh Labh, concepts of ahimsa, concepts of dharma, concepts of harmony, ecology, etc., etc.
Mm.
And it is these universal principles,
Yeah.
which is today where the world is moving towards,
Yes.
is what I am talking has been the tradition, the
Yeah.
Gangotri of the Indian River.
Mm.
Okay, it has always been there in
Yes.
terms of sustainability, in terms of preservation and so on. And that is what I mean by thinking global.
Oh,
Okay,
great.
and acting Indian is acting from the Kal Desh and Patra of the self with all the Indian attributes of karuna, compassion, love, looking after the
Mm.
etc. etc.
Mm.
That's the context of thinking Indian. So when I look at these two processes, Tribhuvan, of thinking global, acting Indian, we are in an environment today where we have inherited 7,000 years of a living civilization, which is still living.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are also born, you and I,
Yes.
in a postmodern, industrialized social world.
Yes. Absolutely.
So we carry with us a very ancient rootedness to the past
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and a very modern kaleidoscope of the present. So you
Absolutely.
have, imagine the dance of Shiva, on one
Uh,
hand,
yeah.
and the kaleidoscope on the other.
Yes.
And these two auxiliary and primary processes come together to create a heady concoction
Yeah.
in the way in which we act, in the
Yes.
way in which we think, in the way in which we feel,
Yeah.
and the way in which we behave.
Absolutely. Great. So, coming to the very great thing which even I most like in this book, that is the your spotlight section, where you have interviewed many great leaders, stalwart leaders, example Nainalal Kidwai, Kiran Majumdar, and Harsh Marwa, Som Mittal, Rajiv Memani. So these are the few names which I am collecting it, and that gives really me a different aura of this book, because when you have conceptualized this thought, and it's not like just your thought, you have talk with these stalwart leaders and then take some views and then you have formulate this. So that is the best part which I like it. So my question is, how do you manage that interaction with these leaders? These are the renowned names which I have taken few of them, but otherwise how you manage the your interactions, because all are busy, and second, giving them thought, then processing on with their interaction, and then I mean, it's amazing actually.
So, Dhruvan, uh, let me just step back and then respond to your question.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
the whole book has got five E's, five evidence.
Mm,
The first evidence is ethic, looking from outside
mm.
to India,
Yeah,
globe, Trompener, Hosted, looking outside inside.
yeah.
The second E is emic, looking from indigenous psychology to who we are
Mm,
and what our ethnic being is. That's the
mm,
second one.
mm.
The third one is looking at my own personal experience of my
Yeah,
own prejudice and my bias.
yeah, yeah.
The fourth E is looking at the environment and modern leaders, which is
Mm,
the spotlight.
yeah, yeah.
And the fifth E is what is the reader who's reading my book is saying, Steve, this book is bingo or the book is rubbish. So there are five sources of evidence
Mm,
that will tell whether we are right or wrong. Now, I was very lucky. In India, if you approach senior leaders through someone who will endorse for you, and knows you, you have a better chance of getting access to the leader.
Yeah.
So I was lucky that I knew people who knew some of these leaders,
Mm.
and their endorsement helped, and they gave me the time.
Mm.
And some of them I approached directly and explained what I
Mm.
was doing. And after I got 2 or 3 spotlight leaders to agree, and they did the interviews, then the fourth, fifth, and sixth became easier because I had got
Yeah.
the first 2 or 3 initial ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And people found the time because it was very interesting for them, as it was interesting for me. It was a big honor and a privilege to be able to spend time with them.
Absolutely.
And I wanted, Tribhuvan to confirm that what I had written, which was researched, was not some concept, which is, it's a good concept, world is one family, but wo to purana
Ah,
zamana ka idea hai.
correct.
I
Correct.
wanted to check whether the concept is being lived today on 8th of July 2021. And the answer is yes. When you read the spotlight, it is as modern and as refreshed than it was 4,000, 3,000, 1,000
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
That is the beauty. So if you read Kiran Mazumdar, and she talks about the
Yeah.
Thakurta, or
Yeah.
you read the Mercedes-Benz talking about the two
Yes.
cultures,
Yeah.
they are happening right now, clarifying that there is this Indianness that is prevalent, ubiquitous in India.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the best part, which I feel it. And that's what I said. That was my submissions. I don't know how the other readers response on it, but that is the best. And it's not easy to approach the people and getting them on the idea and the thought what you are bringing into your book. So it's not very easy actually. So that's how I thought I will ask you this question. So, going to the next question related to the same. So, I read many time in this book, which is the Indianness word. I have read it, and you have little bit explain it also in context of the leader. So, can you little bit elaborate that, or can you define any fundamental difference? Because I understand on the book also you mention it is it's not a difference any you are not differentiating leaders, but any fundamental things you see in the style between Indian origin leaders versus the non-Indian leaders. I don't know. Would you like to speak on that or not?
No,
First of all,
it's a very
yeah,
good question, Tribhuvan. It's a very good question. So let me answer it in the following manner.
yeah,
The imperatives, the challenges, the issues that human beings face
yeah,
are universal.
true.
How societies and nations respond to these cultures, to these imperatives and issues and challenges, are cultural. I repeat, while there is a universal bucket of imperatives,
Mm,
the societal or national response to it is cultural.
yeah.
One of the concerns I have with Western leadership models,
Mm,
and I call it Western leadership model because it originated mostly after Second World War,
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
written by North America
Mm,
and in Europe,
mm,
written mostly by men,
mm,
experimented and researched on weird participants, weird being W for Western,
mm,
educated, industrialized, rich,
mm,
and D for democratic. And by doing that research and coming up with leadership principles, it did not include the feminine aspects. It did not include any other geography.
mm,
And the postulate is that what is good for this culture, which comes from an agrarian industrialized with what Weber calls the iron cage, is
mm,
applicable to the rest of the world. As if, Tribhuvan, if I take seeds and throw it in different soils, the plant will grow, which
Yes.
is which is wrong.
Mm.
In my book, I have clarified that Indian sociologists, researchers working with the West have found that
Mm.
many of the universal ideas
Mm.
on achievement, on many other aspects,
Mm.
have found those ideas are not having traction
Mm.
in the Indian fertile soil.
Mm.
And therefore, we need to understand from the Kal, Desh, and Patra
Mm.
what is going to be the kind of soil in which this seed will
Mm.
grow. So, for example, the nurture and task JBP Sinha's model
Mm.
is the right model for India in terms of the anurag and adhikar of the leader,
Mm.
compared to the narcissistic model of charismatic leader or the democratic leader or the affiliative leader and some of the leadership that you read in the Western literature.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So without wanting to condemn any universal practice, all I'm saying is that there is some notion of what works in India. See, unfortunately, Baba, just to level with you,
Yeah,
we've never had a chance to be Indian.
absolutely.
200 years of colonial British,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
came the American, then came the
Japanese,
Japanese
correct.
Kaizen, then came some other stuff.
Correct.
So, but what has kept India going has been a very Indian way, which has lasted for hundreds of years, like the Tatas, Asim Premji's
Yeah,
Wipro,
Vipro.
the Reliance growth that you can see.
Mm.
It's only today that
Mm.
people are woken up to the fact that,
Yeah.
boss, there is an Indian way of management. You
Mm.
take a company like Unilever,
Mm.
it
Mm.
might be British sounding, but
Mm.
it's very much Indian.
Mm.
And if I were to give you some more data, Tribhuvan,
Mm.
how many multinationals do you see are actually there in India? Most of the organizations, particularly after 1991, have
Mm.
actually been Indian organizations that have actually, grown tremendously,
Yes, yes.
and has been there for a company which you are working for, example, HCL,
Yeah.
yeah, Infosys,
Yes.
Wipro in
Yeah.
the IT sector, and I can name in other sectors as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of what, so for us, we need to really study the distinctive way of Indian management,
Mm.
and what lessons it has, perhaps for the world, and to understand what lessons it has for ourselves. Because Tribhuvan, we might think that, I'll give an example. We are like doing a Shakespearean play in NCPA theater in Mumbai.
Mm.
We are saying, like Hamlet, to be or not to be,
Mm.
that is the question.
Mm.
Forgetting that we are not Hamlet, we are Tribhuvan.
Mm. Absolutely.
But we are using English. We
Mm.
are on an Indian stage thinking it is Shakespearean. The audience is Indian, the actors are Indian. So
Yes.
inside you, there is a Tribhuvan Indian
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
who's acting
Acting as a somebody has
Western,
role.
who's acting Western,
Yes.
who's acting Western.
Ah.
And I am trying to make you conscious
Mm.
that inside the Hamlet,
Mm.
if I say Tribhuvan, you
Mm.
will wake up and say, yes, Steve, what happened?
Mm.
It is for you to understand that which you're unconscious, I am
Mm.
making conscious.
Mm.
So your Indian leadership style is something which is already there. And when this Indian leadership style goes outside,
Mm.
like when you see Nadella, or you see
Mm. Mm. Mm.
all the
Sunil,
other,
Sunil Pichai and all. Yeah.
all these others, these 20, 30 of them, what do they bring? They bring Indian concepts of leadership. What
Mm.
are those concepts?
Mm.
Kutum, Parivar, knowing your family,
Mm.
affiliative processes,
Mhm.
care.
Mm.
That's what they bring outside, and that's why they are so successful. And the
Right.
same is also true with India. So please don't misunderstand me when I say there are some universal leadership principles,
Yes.
but whether those principles are anchored into the soil for it to flourish, I have offered the cultural context
Mm.
apart from the psychology of leadership.
Mm. Absolutely. So this was very important actually. Now it is clarified to my viewers as well as the might be those who will read this book, them also it will be clarified. So that is very important. That's what I brought up this question. So the next question, Steve, I read one. page number 197, which is the book chapter 7, I think. Yeah, it is chapter 7. There you talk about the psychology of leaders, and there was a spotlight of Ashok Malhotra. He mentioned two type of positions: P1 primary socialization and P2 secondary socialization. So can you elaborate a little bit on this, and also let me know how it impact the style of anyone's leadership quality?
So Ashok Malhotra has for over 25 years been working on the existential universal mapper, and
Yeah.
has also written a book on the Indian manager. And that book is certainly well worth reading, because also it's got a lot of research to it,
Okay.
based on the U model. So when I talk about P1 and P2, as he mentions in the book, there's fundamentally societies that respond to the challenges in different ways. So let me give you one example. One example could be agonic and hedonic. In agonic model, you are always protecting your clan versus the outsiders. And it's competitive model. You are the big monkey protecting others from the,
Correct.
and therefore bravery, courage, etc. are valued in that culture. In a different culture where there is no enemies, the grass is green, the rose is red, the banana trees are growing, there's plenty of coconut, there's plenty of fish, something maybe like India, which has always been endowed with plentiful. There the hedonic model, which is gifting. The leader is one who the leader is valued of one who gives, who has got sagacity, who is kind, who is benevolent, who is respect, who is given respect. So these two models have been brought together. Now, what Ashok is trying to say, that in today's world, where India has borrowed from the Western leadership model, which is competitive, dog eat dog, masculine, combative.
Yes.
That is the
big word.
That is the agonic model.
Yeah.
And then you have a natural Indian model of love, touch the elders' feet, respect the elders.
Yes.
Equitability as opposed to equality. Rules versus principles in the Indian model. You seem to have two different cultures.
Yeah.
And these two different cultures create polarities, paradoxes, dilemmas. जो हम लोग कहता है in India we call it dharam sankatas.
Correct.
So this P1, P2 needs to be coexisting, normalized. And if you swing from one to the other, you will have individual waste and organizational waste.
Absolutely.
So you will be like Trishanku.
Yes.
Either in heaven or on earth.
Yeah.
So you will lean towards a very Indian system, which is not very good, or a very professional Western system, which is also not very good.
Absolutely.
So in essence, the effective system is to co-hold the P1, P2 positions. Okay, to co-hold, to bring, जो बुद्धा जो कहता है, middle path between the two. Is it making sense? And when you can, and I write in my book, when the Harvard and the Gurukul Varanasi come together, we create the Rajeshwari model.
Yes.
And that to me is the leadership that we need to take going forward.
Yeah.